people now know what their why is. And it's not about compensation. It's about seeing my kids go to school in the morning, or having the flexibility to work work maybe early, get up earlier and work because you want to have that time maybe in the afternoon with your children or with your spouse to maybe just take a long walk, right? So what I'm seeing is leaders are struggling with that. And so the way I describe it to the leadership team as well is that the gig is up. And that's a saying in the U.S., basically that this is over, this period is over, it's a reset, okay? Employees know that companies have the resources to give us, flexibility. They have the budget to, pay more competitive salaries.
It's crazy.
We know that now.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the HR Leaders Podcast. And today's episode, I'm joined by Fredericka Butler, who's the head of HR at Takeda. During the episode, we discuss how employee expectations are changing and where employers and leaders need to focus to understand what your workforce really needs. As always, before we jump into the video, make sure you hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and follow on your favorite podcast platform. Let's jump in. Fredericka, welcome to the show. How are you?
I am well, living the dream.
What is your idea of living the dream? There we go. We're going to jump in there.
So, I mean, at this point in my life, I can truly say I feel like I have, some level of freedom, right? I have the option to work where I want to work, live where I want to live, take nice vacations, provide great education opportunities for the children. And when I look at where I came from to where I am today, I feel like I'm truly living the dream.
Yeah. Well, that's what we want to hear. That's so nice to hear. Yeah. Well on you. So I'm like a little bit further behind you on that journey. So when you look back again, you've got 3 kids, you're married, great job. How does it make you feel when you kind of look back on where you were to where you are now?
Yeah. Very proud and just very humbled, right? It took a long, feels like forever to get here. But, I grew up in a rural town in South Carolina. So definitely a Southern girl. You can't get more Southern than South Carolina, right? But the Carolinas, growing up, it was, textile industry. Now, North Carolina and South Carolina, top 1 and 2 in the textile industry. So all of my family worked in a textile mill. So hardworking, working class family. And I can remember one particular visit we had. It was a family day, and we went to my aunt's job, and she was, excited to show, her job and what she did. And after watching her, I felt a little bit sad, actually.
Really?
First of all, I've never seen my aunt move that fast, but it's a highly manual job, right? And so I really, in that moment, I felt like it was almost inhumane. It was very, cold. It was just not I didn't have a good feeling.
Was it like a factory warehouse type environment?
It was a factory warehouse environment. And so in that moment, I think I was around 12. I was in middle school, so like 7th, 8th grade. And in that moment, I made a decision that, I don't want this to be my life. So I have to focus on school. I have to go to university. And so, and that's what I did. I was, a very good student, went to college. And ironically, my second job out of graduate school was a plant HR manager.
No way.
So yeah,
it's like it's meant to be. That was like full 360 from you having that
full 360, and it was a union environment.
No,
so
wow.
Here I am.
But now you're empowered. That's exciting. It's almost like your purpose met you along the way, right? Like
right.
You're like, all of a sudden you're in a position to create a better working environment, to improve the employee experience. As well.
Yes.
Wow. How cool is that? Did you have that conversation, just out of curiosity, with your aunt years later at all?
No, I know I would
No, I'm
never
just
do that
wondering.
because I didn't want, because at the end of the day, my family was able to provide a decent life for us. I grew up
Hmm.
feeling, very happy, loved, supported. So, but that's the environment, right?
Yeah.
There wasn't like,
No, I
these
just meant it in the
huge,
sense of
yeah,
like how, like the fact that she worked there and all of a sudden you're HR manager
yeah.
or something similar. It's like,
Yeah. Now, yes, we have certainly had those conversations.
mm,
This particular aunt is actually kind of like my second mother, so we're very close, and so
okay.
we've had those candid conversations about, watching her, even it being a wife and a mother, how I learned so much from her. But that watching that experience watching her, I think that really changed. My life, and it made me be more focused as a student. But at the end of the day, like I said, they were able to provide, everything that we needed, right? They were able to buy homes, cars, make sure that we had everything that we needed, and to send us off to college. So
That's
but
amazing achievement, honestly.
right,
As well,
absolutely.
and made you
Hard
stronger.
work.
And you saw that, right? Like that's the thing. Like
Oh yeah.
I never understood growing up how like until now more like how your environment shapes you.
Oh
And
yes.
and my mum, bringing up 4 kids on her own, I only realized years later that that's kind of like that level of resilience that she had to have to
Hmm.
do that. And there's hard times and
Hmm.
times where we got no money and stuff like that. And I said to my mum not long ago, I was like, that's the biggest strength I got from you is resilience. Like
Right.
many people, like I've got one child and I'm like, this is hard enough. And you managed to do that on government benefits and still give us
Wow.
some sense of normal, right? Childhood. It was not
Well
easy,
done.
as well. But yeah, that really shapes you as you get old. Like when
Absolutely.
I face challenges in life, I kind of look back and be like, it's not so bad. Like,
Yes.
perspective.
Yeah.
When you take a step back and be like, have an attitude of gratitude and be like,
Oh
I've
yes.
got it really good,
Yeah.
as well. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And when I, go home to visit, I'll drive through, the neighborhood that I grew up in.
mm,
And, it's a very proud moment, but it's also an opportunity to show the kids, because kids don't know. They just know where you are now, right?
100% don't
But if
see
you
that.
show them, this is where I grew up, and they're like, wow,
I want to do that with
So,
Robin when I'm older, because one of my worries with Robin is that she doesn't experience struggle. And I feel like because that is what shapes me and made me who
right.
I am, is that determination to push through and to
Hmm.
fail forward, get back up. I don't want
Absolutely.
to shelter her too much. So that's one of my worries, that she grows up and doesn't really understand. I think
Right.
facing adversity shapes you so
Oh,
positively
absolutely.
as well. So I do
Absolutely.
want to show her that. I don't know how I do that, to be honest, because my mum now lives in a nice house in a relatively nice area, so she's not really going to see the
Right.
council block that we lived in with, you have to walk
Right.
up 30 flights of stairs because the lift never worked. and
Right.
and like all of those things, like she would never really, the fact that we had a TV
Yeah.
you have to put money into to turn on, because she couldn't afford a TV, she has to put pound coins in the TV
Yeah.
to turn it on.
Wow.
All of those
Wow.
things. She's like, what do you mean you used to put money in the TV? I'm like, that's a real thing.
Yeah, the kids have no idea,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
No idea. But you find those opportunities to opportunities that can be teachable moments. And I certainly
100%.
try to take advantage of that, because you're right, kids are so far removed from some of the experiences, certainly the experiences that I had. And that's what, growing up in that environment, that's where my work ethic came from, my drive came from. So if you're kind of growing up in a cushy,
Yeah.
you have, the latest cell phone and the latest this and that. It's like, what are you working towards, right?
Hmm. Yeah, that's well. If you figure it out, let me know, because
I will.
I need to know what the balance is.
Still learning, right?
Yeah, because there is I saw last thing I'll say before we jump into some HR content, everyone. Listen, I did see some research years back of wealth creation, and it was over like a 50-year period of someone who had nothing generating millions of pounds in a business, and like 2 or 3 generations later, the money being lost because it become less and less resilient because they get more and more, greater lifestyle, nicer area, less likely to, and then it had this curve of like the person who had the grit, determination to drive to here, and then unfortunately the next 3 or 4 sets of generations kind of lost it all. And I was like, oh man, like how do you instill that,
how do you maintain that wealth? And it's generational wealth. How do you create that? It's definitely a journey. So we're all trying to figure that out.
We'll figure it out. Talking about shifts, we've seen a massive shift in expectations from our employees, especially over the last couple of years, and for good reason as well. I'd love to see what your thoughts are on what expectations you've seen shift and the feedback you're getting.
Yeah, so very, very good starting question there. I think we saw what we're seeing now. I've seen over the last, I would say, decade of this shift of what employees are looking for, the type of environment that they want to work in, the type of leadership, what their expectations are. But what I would say, and in the research that I've seen and all the data that we've seen, post-pandemic, is that the pandemic brought everything to the surface, right? Everything that we've seen and heard in the last decade when we talk about wages for, our first responders, the restaurant industry, service industry, all of a sudden, here's $3 or $4 per hour, right? After the pandemic. In a corporate environment, people were asking for more flexibility. I remember after my first child, I asked my boss, when I came back from maternity leave, because in the United States, we only get 6 weeks or 8 weeks.
Still blows my mind, by the way.
Yeah. Or you can, take up to 12
unpaid.
weeks, but it's unpaid, right? Yeah. So who can afford that when you're on your first child, right? So I remember having those conversations, and I was flat out told, no, we can't. I don't know how we can make that happen. And so all of a sudden the pandemic hits, and it's almost like a light switch, and the company, was able to pivot and ensure that we had the resources needed to be able to now work remote. And so what we're seeing, and I know a lot of your guests, there's a lot of conversation around well-being, expectations, and so we saw that before the pandemic, and now it's here. What do we do? And that's what I'm seeing, is that leaders are now struggling with meeting those expectations, right? We're asking people to come back to work. Some companies have taken the bold move of, your job is, you make the decision. You are empowered to make that decision. But what we're seeing is that employees they know that they are empowered to, ask for more. They are, making decisions to, look for other opportunities that meet their expectations. One of the things that I talk to my leadership team about often is that, and to try to remind them that people now know what their why is. And it's not about compensation. It's about seeing my kids go to school in the morning, or having the flexibility to work maybe early, get up earlier and work because you want to have that time maybe in the afternoon with your children or with your spouse to maybe just take a long walk, right? But people value that now. We're seeing people work less overtime. And overtime, we know, is a lot of people depend on that, right, to pay their bills and take care of their families. But we're seeing people walk away from that. I will work, whatever my scheduled hours are, but I value my time with my family more, or my time off more. So what I'm seeing is leaders are struggling with that. And so the way I describe it to the leadership team as well is that the gig is up. And that's a saying in the U.S., basically, that this is over. This period is over. It's a reset. Okay. employees know that companies have the resources to give us, flexibility. They have the budget to, pay more competitive salaries.
It's crazy.
We know that now. So it's like, what do you do?
We're not going to give it back. Yeah. It's so interesting, isn't it? Because it makes you think that one side is great because we've made big strides, but on the other side, it's like, well, we could have always done that. Like you said, like the gig is, and that's really frustrating at the same time. And to add into the mix, as you said, people had so much time to think during lockdown and stuff like that, to think about, what really matters to me. What, and they realize it isn't about the work. It isn't about the money. It's actually, for me, for example, it was going to spend for a walk with my daughter at lunchtime. Yeah. And being like, every day we get to go for a half an hour walk near the pond near our house and just sit down together, have quality time, no distractions. And when we came back to the work, I said to my co-founder, look, I want to take Friday mornings off just to spend with Robin. And then that's a non-negotiable now. And everyone knows in my team that Friday morning, Chris is with Robin. Don't distract him. Don't talk to him as well. And because that means more to me than whatever I can do during that time. So it's put employers and leaders in a tough position.
Very tough position. Very tough position. And that is what, anytime there's, a town hall or when I meet with employees, it's all about, what are the new expectations for me coming back to work? And it's a fluid situation, right? Because employees are on the defense. So it's like, well, we don't really know. Let's see how it goes, and then we'll review it again. But aside from just the hybrid work models or having more flexibility, I think that leaders, another area that they're struggling in is that employees also want a connection. And obviously that is hard when you have a certain percentage of people home and a certain percentage of people at work, but so it makes the leader have to work harder to develop that relationship.
You've got to be purposeful.
Let's just face it, a lot of leaders do not have very good soft skills, or they're not, it's difficult for them to have that type of relationship with their team. And so when you think about servant leadership and you look at that research, it's all about well-being. And that research was conducted before either of us were born, right? In the early 70s. True, yeah. It's all about well-being of the employee and the community in which we reside. So now in 2022, we're talking about well-being.
Crazy.
When we know that is the basis of everything. As a leader, you have to lead through that lens of well-being. And a lot of leaders are used to that transactional, we'll give you a pay increase or we'll give you a promotion, but you're not giving me the psychological safety. You're not having those conversations with me, checking in with me to see how am I doing holistically.
Yeah, forget not just the work. How yeah. It almost honestly it still baffles me that we even having this conversation still.
Absolutely.
When I first became, I've told this story so many times on the podcast, but when I first became a manager, I was told all of the things. They're not your friends. You don't, you're the manager. They're the thing, I used to get told off.
Right.
Like I remember I used to go to lunch with my team. We had a little running club and I got pulled into a meeting by my director being like, what are you doing? You're the manager. They're not going to respect you if you're vulnerable.
Right.
They're not going to respect you if you don't have all the answers. And it's all wrong. Like literally every single piece of advice they gave me, I was like, what are you doing? You're sabotaging. Yeah. But unfortunately, in many companies, it's still the same.
It's still the same. You're right.
It's still the same. But the thing is, those leaders that were great became better leaders during this time. And those leaders that weren't have just been even more so the spotlight is shining even more because you can't do that, especially in a hybrid environment. That leadership style doesn't even work. Even if even if it doesn't work, it's gone as well. And also people aren't going to accept it anyway. Like in the past, people probably got it out, and we talk about quiet quitting and other things like that, but people are just not going to accept that anymore.
No, they will not accept it, and they will call you on it, right? Because they have the empowerment to do that, because if you're not creating a great experience as a leader, employees will leave, and that's what we're seeing, right? You've seen these salary increases. Companies are more flexible, but yet there's still an attrition problem definitely across the U.S. So the gap, what's the gap? The gap is the leadership style. Leaders, as you just expressed, those leaders, you were groomed to be that way, right? To have those boundaries, it's all about business, getting things done. Micromanaging. And now employees will not accept that, and they will let you know that. And so that's what we're seeing, though, that gap of, okay, we've done all these things, but we're still seeing attrition. So we're still not getting to the root of the problem.
Yeah. How are you preparing your leaders for this?
Yeah. So a couple of different ways. So my focus now is all about being a better coach. Forget we know what our leadership competencies are, the behaviors, right, that the company has developed. But at the end of the day, you have to perfect being a coach, right? You've got to do in the moment coaching. I see a shift in your behavior or your body language, even on video. If we're having Teams meetings, which is typically the case, and you notice someone has turned off their camera and you've seen that consistently, that's a sign you need to check in with them, right? So managers, for some reason, or leaders, are having a difficult time perfecting that, being a coach. If you think about, athletic coaches and their ability to coach the person's strengths, they know what the strengths are of each player because it's different, right? So they understand that all of the strengths of all of their players. They know the areas that they're not that strong in. So they have other team members or other players who have those specific strengths. And that's how you build a winning team. That's what it's all about. And I think that leaders, they still don't get that because they're still focused on, strategic agility and all of those things are important. Yeah. And if you're in a leadership role, you already have that or you wouldn't have gotten the job. But now you need to work on coaching. How do I motivate? How do I provide that vision? I'll tell you, one of the best leadership experiences I've ever had working with a specific leader is this individual made everyone feel like they could do anything. You would think that you were their favorite, and I would think that I was the favorite, right? Because he understood, okay, I know what Fredericka's strengths are. I'm going to coach to that. And the other, areas that she's not as strong, we'll work on that. But I'm going to make sure that she feels empowered, that she is motivated on a daily basis. He was always positive. And that's the experience that people are looking for. Yeah,
no, you're right. You're so right. And I think what leaders are struggling, I think already they were struggling before hybrid right. to do that. And now this is just another layer of complexity of how you manage when you've got half your team in the office, half out. When do you get everyone together? Like you said earlier, there's a lot. Microsoft did some research recently and they was asking people why they want to come back to the office. And it was kind of almost unanimous that they come back for each other, not for the work, but they came back. What a surprise. Yeah. They come in because they want to see each other. Why should we be surprised? Not to do work, not to open a laptop and sit there on Excel, but to be around each other. So kind of navigating all of that is super tough.
It's a challenge.
How has this changed the types of conversations and work that you're doing with your team now?
As I said, we're really focusing on, the coaching piece. That is huge. Also, one of the things that we're also seeing is that employees, they don't want to be in the same job for more than say 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, about say 2 years, right?
You've got that generation coming into the workforce, and the last few companies I've worked for, that's more than 50% of your workforce. So if you're trying to operate under, dated, development planning process, talent management process, it's not going to work, because this new generation
is so funny.
They want frequent change,
they want it now.
Frequent challenges. They want to be, a director in 3 years. So, which, that's almost unrealistic. But again, they want frequent feedback, and that's when you go back to the coaching. So fortunately, at Takeda, for example, we have totally moved to a more progressive performance management process. And so a lot of companies are doing that, to where we're having more grown-up conversations about performance, for example.
In the moment.
It's not about,
as in rather once a year.
Yeah, it's not just once a year. And it's not that, at the end of the year, Chris, you're rated a 4 this year.
Oh,
But let's talk. Let's have a conversation about what you want. What interests do you have? What can we do as an organization to help you get there?
Yeah.
Let's map that out together. And a lot of leaders, they are still, like I said, in that same sort of traditional cookie cutter thinking of, well, we'll just talk to you at the end of the year and give you, your rating. That's just not going to fly anymore. And so companies are definitely, they're getting it, but we're not there yet.
Yeah. That's another one which always surprises me. Like, let's be honest, anyone listening right now, when you sit down and have that, annual review,
right,
how often has the needle or targets changed between when you have that meeting and the next year? Every time. It looks completely different.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of like, by the time you get to the end of the year, look back at what the goals you set, the targets, the direction.
Totally different.
It's like pointless. It's like we've pivoted 5 times since that meeting. As well, and especially as we're moving to more agile work, project-based work, it's like that's not going to work anyway.
It's not the older way of doing things, like I said, the traditional sort of annual review process, it doesn't work it doesn't work right anymore. It's a mixed match at this point. And so some of the other things that I'm doing is encouraging, using my voice in HR to work with the business on updating our policies, procedures, and our best practices to be more innovative, to be aligned with what our employees are asking for. Because we do surveys, we do, pulse surveys throughout the year. We have, different feedback forums. And if we're not using that to update and change how we lead, how we, the environment that we're creating, then why are you surprised that you're losing people?
Yeah.
So in addition to the coaching piece, I think that leaders also have to, it's continuous self, development. If you sat down with 10 leaders and asked them, when's the last time you read an article or a book about leadership, about the, when is the last time you've done any type of development for yourself? I can guarantee you half of those 10 individuals will probably say 0.
That's
because
crazy.
We don't spend time on that at all.
And that's our number one. That should be our number one priority. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I'm actually went through, I'm being coached at the moment, and my coach Chester sat down with my entire team and my wife, actually. I asked him to include my wife in the process, which he was like, no one's asked me that before. I was like, well, she is one of the most important decision makers. Very good decision. Yeah, and I had 2 key areas that I need to focus on, and it's interesting because it's hard to hear the feedback from the team, because you're like, oh, I thought I was doing a good job in terms of my direction and me creating a clear vision for the company. Clearly not. As well. But I can tell you right now, like, it felt so good to know that I'm going in the right direction, and actually, because otherwise I'm just kind of like operating in the dark, not knowing. I'd rather my team be open and comfortable to come to me and give me that feedback than basically me assuming that I'm doing a good job. And similar with my wife, you know, it's nice to hear vis-a-vis Chris. I want Chris to be a more present dad. I want him to be a more present husband, right? You know, I want him to focus on taking time out for me and Robin and not always working, right? Whereas on my side, I thought everything I was doing was for them. I work hard because I want to create a better life for you and Robin. I work hard so we can do those things, but I thought it wasn't coming across. It came across the complete opposite, right? So it's so important as well. Before I let you go on, I don't want to talk a quick fire round. I'm going to ask you some questions, but only got 30 seconds per question.
30 seconds?
Yeah, that's it. No pressure. What are your hobbies and passions outside the office?
Oh, wow. I love theater.
Oh,
anything
interesting.
In the arts.
What's your favorite?
Oh, wow. So I just, a couple of weeks ago, I went to see Tina on Broadway.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Nice. You need to come to London for the Broadway experience. You'll love it here as well.
Oh, I'll have to do that the next time I'm there for sure.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. If you could click your fingers and change one thing about HR, what would you change?
Oh, wow. I would definitely change just some of the old, dated processes, right?
Yeah.
We've got to get out of that.
Yeah,
we've got to be more innovative. We've got to, have more enjoyment. What I'm seeing now is that a lot of my peers, and if they watch this, I hope they don't take it the wrong way. And I'm not talking about my peers at my current company, but as you go up in your career, you get more removed from the employees, and you become more, it's almost like you become stale or just you just
you're disconnected.
So I want us to be more connected.
Get out the office.
Even if you're the CHRO, figure out a way to be more connected.
Get to it. How would your friends and family describe what you do for a living?
Oh gosh, my kids would say probably something along the lines of I hire and fire people.
You hire and fire people. Yeah, it wouldn't be the first time that's the response. So right. Yeah. If you wasn't working in HR, what would you be doing? I
would be probably doing something similar to what you're doing. I love talking to people, having conversations. So I'd probably be on CNN or, having
I think I get those vibes from you. I feel like you'd be really good, like news broadcaster or like CNN.
Yeah, so if you need someone part-time, let me know.
Yeah, I love it. No, that's cool. Have you ever considered quitting? If so, why?
Oh gosh, absolutely. I have 3 kids. That answers that question.
That's it, done. Yeah. What's the biggest investment you've made in yourself?
Wow. So personal investment is definitely, financial, I would say my education. Personal, my oldest is 19, and in 19 years, I have only worked about 10 or 11 years. So I took time when I needed to take care of the kids and, so amazing. I would definitely say that was a huge investment, to my family and for myself to take that time off.
Oh, good on you. Good on you for doing that. Who would you say is the one person in your career that's had the biggest impact?
Oh, wow. So I talked about him a little bit earlier, but his name is Anthony Rotuno, and he is by far, when you're talking about, servant leadership, transformational leadership, he is just phenomenal. He's retired now, but he's awesome.
Amazing. Shout out.
The best experience I've had.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And last question, what's one piece of advice you would give to the HR leaders of tomorrow?
I would encourage them or challenge them. I'll say this, challenge them to get outside of the HR, to think outside of the box. One of the things that I challenge myself to do every year is to join a project that has nothing to do with HR.
Cool.
For a couple of reasons. One is that it helps you be a better partner to the business, and 2, you learn something new. So it's a development opportunity. So I would challenge my HR community to do that.
Yeah, and I think thirdly, I'll add to that just is that you're also building a network outside of the function. So when it comes to engaging the business in project transformations, etc., you kind of got the ear.
Yeah. And like I said, you can be a better partner because you understand what's going on.
Not just on paper, but you really understand.
Right.
There's a big difference. Listen, thanks so much for coming on. Honestly, I love your energy, your passion for what you do. And I wish you all the best and look forward to doing this again soon. I appreciate you.
Good talking to you.